Wentz steps up. Here comes the rush. He is going deep, and it is caught. And in for a touchdown, Deshaun Jackson.
Give the people what they want.
Reuben, when you go 4-11-1, there are going to be changes, and we're starting to see some of them already.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, it's like the annual offensive coaching staff changes. I mean, it's a rite of winter around here. It happens every January.
It certainly does. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Ray Didinger will join us in just a few minutes to talk about Carson Wentz and get into the Hall of Fame a little bit. Eric Allen left off of the top 15 finalists for this year's class. We're going to take a look at the wild card round, the teams that are going to be playing this weekend while the Eagles are off golfing or firing coaches or whatever they're doing. And we'll even give our Super Bowl predictions. We'll get those in now so we can laugh at ourselves when we're really wrong in a few weeks. But let's first start with some offensive changes. Rich Zangaro, Marty Morningweg will not be back. Not really a surprise. These guys were on one-year contracts. The Eagles are going to let these contracts expire and move on.
Yeah, no real surprise. You know, right from the start when they structured the offensive coaching staff, the roles were vague. We never got a clear sense of what Marty did, what Rich did, what Andrew Briner did, the three new guys. Press Taylor's job description was changed. I know we were both I remember talking about, Rich when he first got here. We thought he was going to add a real dimension to what Carson was doing and really kind of play to his strengths, and just kind of, make his movement more a part of the offense. They never had a chance to work on things in the spring because there were no practices, and then the season started and they just didn't do that stuff. And now he's gone. It's like, it's just kind of, we talked to him a couple times and he seems like a sharp guy, but we never really got a sense of what he could add, what he did add. Marty's been jumping around the league for a while. He was out of the league.
The wise old owl, as
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts called him.
Yeah, he did call him that. Who knows? We never did talk to Marty since he came back. I don't know what he did. I don't know what his role was. I mean, he's a guy that I think he's a pretty sharp football mind. But I just, it makes, Doug's offensive hiring on the coaching side it's been terrible. They've had no stability in the coaching staff. The guys who are still here, I guess Deuce, Press, and Justin Peele were all Chip Kelly hires.
And Stout.
All three of them were here since 2013.
And Stoutland.
And Stout. Doug's just had trouble kind of finding the right pieces, and they keep changing, whether it's Carson Walsh or Mike Rowe or, there's guys have been coming and going for years.
I hear Carson Walsh is available if you're looking for an offensive coordinator.
You like him better as senior offensive consultant or senior offensive analyst?
Let's not pretend like Doug is making all these decisions on his own either. He's not. He just isn't, because he wanted to keep Mike Rowe last year. And I don't know if this structure was forced upon him, but change was forced upon him. I think that's fair to say. This structure never worked. It clearly didn't work. I don't know what Marty's role ever was or what it was supposed to be. I thought Rich would make a difference. I really did. You
were high on him right from the get-go.
Yeah, the idea of that is a really smart idea. It just never worked. And the idea that he would really work with Carson and it would help them figure out, like they told us, we identified what Carson's good at, right? We figured it out. This is it. We're going to get him moving. We're gonna go with some of these option plays at times, and we're going to get him rolling. We're going to get him throwing on the run. And it's a lot of the concepts that comes from that Shanahan style of offense. And it was the reason they told us they brought in Rich Zangaro. And I know for a fact that Rich found it a little tough to integrate into this offense because you got to remember, and this is not an excuse for failure, but he didn't meet Carson Wentz in person until the summer. I mean, it's really tough for a new coach to come into a coaching staff with a lot of guys who are already established. I mean, you have the head coach who's a quarterback guy. You have Press Taylor, who's the quarterback's coach. You just promoted too, by the way. And now you're this new coach coming in. You've never met the quarterback in person, and you're supposed to start telling him what to do, or at least start to implement what you're supposed to bring to this offense with this quarterback, who, as we know, can be a little stubborn. It's a tough ask, and I don't think they were ever able to get out of Rich Zangaro what they anticipated or what they probably should have.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much Carson embraced Rich. We don't really know.
And we're not sure how much Doug embraced Rich.
Yeah,
and those concepts.
Yeah, because he clearly doesn't like them. He clearly doesn't use them.
And I'll tell you what we found out, Rich had started calling the 2-minute drill pretty early in the season. That came out later, but it was pretty early in the season when he started calling that 2-minute drill. And guess where they were pretty good? I mean, when the rest of the offense was awful, at least they had something in a 2-minute drill. So I think Rich is a decent coach that never really had a chance here. And I don't blame them for moving on because it clearly didn't work, but I think they have bigger problems. And
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, good.
I was just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if we learn in the next few days that Rich was just as eager to go as the Eagles were to let him go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would probably make sense. I mean, if no one's listening, you're in an office, you have the idea no one's listening to it,
what am I doing?
Yeah. The next thing we all want to know is about Press Taylor. And this is a little trickier because as we're going to talk with Ray Didinger soon about Carson Wentz and his standing in the organization, it's kind of tough right now because they're going to be talking with Carson Wentz, trying to smooth over that relationship. In the meantime, they might have to fire the coach he's closest with in the building.
Sure. Yeah. I think everyone's kind of waiting to see what happens next. And I think if the Eagles have organizationally come to terms with the fact that they have to trade Carson Wentz, there's no reason for Press Taylor to be here, is there?
You could argue there's no. I don't want to fire people; it's not fun. But you can make a case that even if Carson is back, why would you keep this guy? Hasn't. I mean, he's regressed under the tutelage of Press Taylor. What good? Why would you keep that guy?
Well, I mean. And how much of that regression is Press and how much is Doug and how much is other factors? It's impossible to say, but it's certainly fair. But Press is already, Press was, here when Nick Foles had his 27-2 season. I mean, Press has had, they've had success. So it's really tough to kind of pinpoint exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't in an elevated position then. He was quality control back then.
Was he? Yeah, I guess you're right. But my point is, I mean, they've had success with Press on the staff, and they've had terrible, obviously a complete breakdown this year. So I kind of expect Press to be gone. I'm kind of surprised we haven't heard that yet. And
to be clear, I don't think Press is necessarily a bad coach. It's never black and white. It was just, Mike Rowe was a great receivers coach and a bad offensive coordinator.
I don't even know how bad he was. I think he'll get another chance at that, especially if Marcus Johnson keeps having 100-yard games. He's actually not there anymore. But, they were a top 10 offense with Mike Rowe. I think he was a scapegoat, just like I think Press is going to be a scapegoat and Rich and Marty are scapegoat. I think they're all – this is Doug's offense. He's the play caller. He designs this thing. He's ultimately responsible. And everything else keeps changing. And Doug's still here. I give Doug more credit than Frank for 17, and I give Doug more blame than Press for this year. I think it's Doug's offense, and I really think it's all on him.
I agree with you. And when they had this weird structure and they got rid of the offensive coordinator, I thought we were going to be able to blame Doug because it's clearly his offense, and maybe we're blaming him, but it maybe won't matter. I think it'll matter in the sense that I kind of expect them to actually hire an offensive coordinator.
I would think so.
You know, you can't go back. This wacky structure didn't work. You can't go back to it.
And I wonder how much these change, like if they do think they can repair things with Carson, I mean, I wonder how much some of the coaching staff changes are a response to that. I mean, Carson, what do you want? You know, who are you comfortable with? Who do you want to work with? If kind of going with the notion that it would make sense to give it one more year, really mainly for cap purposes, but just because he's been a good quarterback and you want to give it another chance to see if you can make it work. You know, Carson, who do you want here? Who do you want coaching you? Who do you think brings out the best in you? And
can you let that dictate your coaching staff?
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I know. And I'm just throwing out the question. I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
it should.
I mean, if he was like
Joe Montana,
if he was playing well,
yeah, if he was Tom Brady or Joe Montana or Aaron Rodgers, you say, yeah, who do you want? I mean, those guys, can pick and choose, but I don't think Carson's really at that point where he should be doing that.
Yeah, he's not anywhere close to that point. But it is fascinating because if he's here, whoever ends up in those elevated offensive coaching positions, one of their big tasks is going to be trying to figure out how to get that guy back. So they play that they're hand in hand, but you can't just hire a guy because of Carson Wentz. You just can't do that.
Yeah. I feel like they need some stability in that offensive coaching room. I think they've got to find the right guys. And, there's been major changes every single year Doug's been here. So.
Yeah. And I mean, there are going to be major changes this year, but how far really? I mean, because O-line, Stallin's back as long as he wants to be back. Justin Peele, there's no reason to change the tight ends coach, I don't think.
I don't know. We didn't see Kroom, the last second half of the season. He didn't do much.
What do you make of Aaron Moorhead, a receivers coach? I think almost for the sake of consistency, they just have to keep him.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because, it was such a weird year. I mean, obviously the wide receivers did not. I don't think any of them really progressed the way you would want. Talking to him, he seems like he's tough on the guys. They seem to like him. But he seems to know his stuff, but the results weren't there. The results just were not there. But, yeah, you can't just keep firing a guy every single year. You can't just keep trying to find a new wide receivers coach. Greg Lewis got fired after 1 year and goes and, wins the Super Bowl with the Chiefs. Now, I kind of understand why he was, but it's just, they need to.
I think the Chiefs had some other stuff going for them.
Yeah, they did. And Greg was coaching Paul Turner, so that's fair. It's probably a bad example, but yeah, I think they do need some stability. You just can't keep, you can't keep firing a guy every year.
Which leaves us to okay, if those guys are staying, then we're talking about maybe the quarterback's coach and then them hiring an offensive coordinator. That's it.
But that's significant. I think if you move on from press and change the structure and move on from Marty and Rich and just have fewer voices in the room. Those are significant changes if that's what you do.
That's true. But I guess it also gets back to how strong of an offensive coordinator are you going to get and how much power is that person going to have? Because I think in general, you have a head coach who loves to call plays. He's really been reluctant to give it up. Are you going to be able to attract really top-notch candidates, especially a candidate who's looking at this offense going, I don't know if I want to go there, especially if no one's going to listen to me. So that's the next question after they make the hire is how much power is that person really going to have, and is it still Doug's offense? And I think it's going to be Doug's offense.
All month long, NBC Sports Philadelphia presents Headstrong, Men's Health and Sports Headstrong a series about men's health told through powerful stories involving the athletes we love. Learn more on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com/headstrong.
Joining us now on the Eagle Eye podcast to figure out the Eagles quarterback dilemma. Ray, just go ahead. Let us know exactly what the Eagles should do. We'll send this podcast to Howie and they can figure it out.
Yeah, and do the exact
send it. He watches it anyway. Come on, he's the first guy to download it when it's up.
Well, I've said before that I would bring him back. I know it's a minority opinion for sure, but I go back to that old phrase. You don't give up on talent, and I still think that there's a lot there in Carson Wentz. 28 years old. We've seen him play really well, and I don't think he's lost all that. I mean, this was a terrible year, and it certainly seems as if he wants out of Philadelphia. But if it can be repaired, I would bring him back, and I would let him and Hurts compete next year's training camp because, Jalen Hurts, he had 4.5 games, and he did some good things, no question. But is he ready to be the number one guy? I'm not so sure. So I would keep Wentz here. If it were salvageable, I would keep Wentz here and bring it back next year. But it seems with every passing day, it seems to become more unlikely.
Yeah, well, the salvageable, I guess, is the big point there. The ESPN report said that it wasn't, basically. The ESPN report said the relationship was beyond repair. A recent report from the Associated Press kind of lightened that a little bit, said the relationship was strained, that Carson was going to take some time, and we're expecting in the next few weeks the two sides to kind of try to see if they can work this out. It's almost like couples therapy. It feels like, and see if they can work it out. I kind of agree with you, Ray, if they can salvage the relationship. But I also wonder, even if the relationship is salvaged, it's not going to go from bad to good. It's going to go from bad to manageable. And is that a situation that's good enough? I don't know the answer to that, but that worries me about even if you try to fix this relationship and it's fixed in January or February, does that mean at the first sign of trouble in September it's all going to unravel again? That would be my biggest fear, I think.
Well, and that's perfectly justified. I mean, I understand that. I don't really this whole idea of the relationship between he and the head coach being broken, fractured, whatever word you want to use. That's the part that doesn't make much sense to me. I don't know. I don't know what more Doug could have done for him. I mean, Doug, in my view, okay, maybe you guys have your own opinion. Doug stuck with him this year longer than most head coaches would have. I thought that Doug gave him every opportunity to get this thing straightened out, turn this thing around, and get back to playing like he did. I mean, he went through halftime of the Green Bay game. A lot of coaches would have pulled the plug earlier, I think. So,
you even give him a series in the third quarter. It's like, let's keep trying here in the third quarter of the Green Bay game.
I just don't. The idea that, look, if he has issues with the drafting of Jalen Hurts, well, that's issues with other people. That's issues with the front office. That's issues with Howie. But the idea that the relationship between he and the head coach, which is really the most important relationship, I mean, to me, it doesn't seem, unless there's stuff happening behind the scenes that we don't see. I mean, I don't know where Doug sort of undercut Carson Wentz. I thought he was as patient with him as he possibly could have been.
And I think you touched on something that I've been really wondering since this all kind of came public is what exactly is his problem? Like, if he's upset with they don't have enough weapons, that's not a Doug thing. If he's upset with, he didn't like the coaching staff structure, I mean, that's a Doug thing. That's possibly it. There was certainly some changes this year that could have negatively affected him. But, maybe it could be not happy with Doug not running the ball enough or his play calling. But most quarterbacks want to throw the ball. I mean, that's what they do. They want to throw the ball 45 times a game. It's really kind of strange to me. He didn't bench him like 3 games into the season. And if something like getting benched in the third quarter of week 12 fractures the relationship, then I don't know how hard Carson's really trying, and And that's what makes me wonder if it is salvageable, because if it took getting benched, and the guy was having the worst season of any quarterback in the league, any established quarterback in the league, if you have some accountability, you put it on yourself. You don't put it on your coach. I don't know exactly what Doug could have done to leave them so estranged, or whatever the word is. That's something that none of these reports have touched on. What exactly is the issue? What's Carson's issue with Doug? What did Doug do wrong?
Yeah. I mean, it's been all that anyone's talked about, which I understand. But I just keep scratching my head saying, it's always the relationship of Doug and Carson. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what the problem is. I mean, I thought that Doug did everything he could to stand behind him, defended him all the time, kept running him out there week after week after week, until he literally couldn't do it anymore. I mean, at the end of that Green Bay game, you just couldn't possibly keep going that way. You had to make a change. So would he have issues, as you were saying, Reuben, about the fact that the players they put around him, the decisions they made, the decision to draft Hurts, if he was a little bit puzzled or upset by that, I could kind of get that, but those aren't really Doug decisions. Those are above Doug. So it keeps coming back to the relationship between Carson and Doug being a bad relationship. And if it is, I'm sort of saying I don't know what the problem is, but that's for him. That's for him to work out. That's for him to say. I know now there's a little bit of a conflicting narrative about, does he want out of Philadelphia? Does he not want out? Does he maybe kind of want out? Does he really want out? It seemed to me, and I think Reuben, you might have even mentioned it a couple of days ago, which is these reports started 2 weeks ago, and then they accelerated. The initial report the guy backed off, and then Mortenson's report came out, was even stronger. But it sat out there for 2 whole weeks, and there was ample opportunity for Carson. If he wanted to shoot it down, he had every opportunity to shoot it down, whether talking to you guys or sending out a tweet or social media or something, and he didn't. So the fact that he just let it stay out there tells me that reflects his true feeling, that he really is angry and he really does want out. And if that's the case, Dave, you're right. I mean, that's a hard thing to bridge. That really is. I don't know that it can be done. I would like to try it. I would like to be able to bring him back and get this thing back on course. But if you were to ask me, I'm saying that would be my wish. But if you're asking me, how do I think it's going to play out? I think this is it. I think that they're going to move him somewhere, somehow. I think they're going to move him.
And the other part of the equation is that from 2017 to 2019, Carson threw 81 touchdowns and 21 interceptions, completed 65% of his passes, had a passer rating just under 97. And Doug was calling those plays, and Doug was his head coach. Now, obviously, Frank was here in 17, but Doug was his head coach. Doug was his play caller, and Frank was not here in 18 or 19. And Carson, for the most part, was pretty good, was a little up and down more than 17. But Carson's had incredible success with Doug as his head coach and his play caller. How do you get from that? I mean, Carson was the 6th highest ranked quarterback from 17 to 19 for those 3 years, with Doug running Doug's offense, with Doug calling the plays, with Doug as his head coach. And 12 and a half games later, it's, irreconcilable differences. How do you get that? How do you not say, well, I had my best year. I had really good years with Doug. I had a lot of success. We have to find out how to get back to that. How is that not the answer? How is just leaving make more sense than trying to get back to where you were just a year ago?
Right.
Yeah, it's tough to figure out. And if his issue, it seems like you're right? It seems like the reports we've heard, the issue is with Doug, which makes much less sense. If his issues were with the organization, you'd kind of understand that a little bit more. Like, hey, you guys haven't gotten me help. You drafted a guy in the 2nd round. I got to look over my shoulder now. Right or wrong, I mean, those things at least add up, right? I mean, there are reasons that he would feel a certain type of way about the organization, but Doug, you're right. He waited too long, in most opinions, to bench him. Even when Jalen Hurts was doing really good things, Doug was really faint in his praise, and even admitted it was in part for Carson's benefit. So, I mean, he's had the kid gloves on now for a while, he's tried to coddle this guy, and it doesn't seem like it's worked. And if that doesn't work, I'm just scared about, well, what will work? I mean, if this approach wasn't enough to make Carson want to stay here, how do you fix it in a meeting in January? It's not a good situation, and I'm starting to really lean toward him not being here, because it might not be completely irreparable, but the fact that word even enters our mind makes me think that even if you fix it, it's not going to be good. And I think it needs to be a good relationship for it to really thrive.
I mean, I guess it's possible they could all sit down and come out of a meeting and say, hey, we hammered this all out. We bared our souls. We put everything out on the table. We were honest with each other, and we came to a good understanding, and then give it one more year. So at least the dead money, if it doesn't work out, isn't quite as, as damaging to your cap. After one more year, you can move them a lot easier. I still think there's a chance of that happening. I don't think it's a great chance, but it's going to take them, to kind of sit down, be honest with each other, and really try to. I mean, it's happened before, but if both sides really want to make it work, you can find a way. You can find some common ground. But yeah, I don't think there's a great chance of that.
Yeah, I don't either. I think you could do it. I think you could. The scene that you just kind of described, Reuben, kind of just a meeting. Let's everybody get in the room, close the door, and be all honest with each other. Lay our real feelings on the table, clear the air, and everybody kind of own up to their own responsibility in this thing. How we got to where we are, and just tell them, listen, we still want you to be our quarterback. I mean, you've played very well here. We've gone real far with you at quarterback. We want to salvage this relationship. How do we go about doing that? What do we need to do? Let's talk this thing out. I'm not saying you could make it all lollipops and ice cream in one sit down, but I think you can get from where we are now, which seems like the bridge is down, to where the bridge can get back up again. Might not be the sturdiest bridge, but you can get it kind of back up so that you can get cars across it, and then get to training camp next year, and then it's on him. And then it's on him. And just give him the opportunity to come back and be the player that he was before, which I still think is very possible. In fact, I think it's more than likely. I think the guy has real talent. I mean, I've seen him play really good football, and I don't think that's gone. And if he's going to come back and be the Carson Wentz of old, I would sooner him do it here than do it in Indianapolis. But I just don't know. I mean, as an organization, they might just decide it's just too messy. And they might be sort of saying what you guys are saying, that, yeah, we can put it together temporarily, but at the first sign of trouble, it's all going to fall apart again. We're going to be right back here again. They may feel that way. But before they get to that point, before they get to the point of just saying, that's it, we're done, I think they owe it to themselves and everybody to just make one last try to kind of put this thing together and see what actually everybody's really thinking. Okay, there are the reports out there, there are the rumors out there. There's the unnamed sources out there. Let's all look each other in the eye and lay it on the table. What's your problem? What's my problem? Let's talk it out and see if at that point, if you have that, then I think you're going to know whether it's salvageable or not. It may not be, but if I were to guess right now, I would say more likely than not, I think they're moving on. But what's really crazy about this is how this all happened in such a short period of time. I mean, how he went from where he was to where he is stunning to me. I mean, I've been covering sports in this town a long time. I don't know that I can name you a similar case where a guy went from being as good as he was to as bad as he was this year in that period of time without an injury in between. To go through a year healthy, but just play that poorly. To me, it's almost unprecedented.
Well, maybe there was an injury, and maybe the concussion has had, concussions are impossible to kind of understand sometimes what their long-term ramifications are. And I think there's at least some chance that, his performance this year was somehow tied to what happened in the Seattle playoff game a year ago yesterday. I don't think it's a huge chance, but I wonder about it.
Yeah. We had when Glenn Macnow and I do the weekend Saturday and Sunday show. Part of it is every Saturday we have a doctor from Cooper Bone and Joint. It's a paid spot. He comes on and we ask him about injuries and stuff like that.
I've had a lot of those shows from Delaware Park trying to figure out what are we going to ask Dr.
What are we going to ask him this? So it was one of those weeks when there was no immediate injury. So I just asked the doctor, I kind of laid it out the way you laid it out. Is there a chance, I know that he's an orthopedist, he's not a neurologist, but is there a chance that he might still be feeling the effects of a concussion that he suffered in January? I mean, and the doctor said, it is possible, that all concussions are so different and are different levels of gravity. And there's still, the medical community is still trying to kind of get their arms around exactly what concussions are and the long-term effects of them and so forth. But he did not reject it out of hand that has some kind of a lingering effect that may have contributed to what's happened to him this year, because otherwise it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But it was, you think about how good he was at the beginning of the year. Someone had asked me, they were doing some sort of a survey about rank the quarterbacks in the NFL, the top quarterbacks in the NFL. This was before the season. And I put Wentz 7th. I mean, I had him up there with all the best of the guys. And I wasn't sure that I wasn't putting him too low. But I thought, I don't want to be accused of being, too Philly on this one. So I put him 7th. But I thought it was a legitimate ranking. To think that that's where I had him in September, and then he finished the year, 35th in a 32-team league? I mean, that's an incredible fall.
Right. I think I had him around the same. I did a preseason quarterback, and I had Wentz right there. So, yeah, I think we're all shocked. And the thing I keep going back to is there are a lot of people in the city who weren't big Carson Wentz fans, and they thought he was overrated, but no one thought he was bad. I mean, maybe you thought he wasn't a top 10 quarterback, but no one would have thought he's 35 out of 32-team league. It's insane. I still agree with you, though, Ray, that their best shot is to get that player playing back at that level. But my confidence level that it happens at this point is not real high.
I'm with you guys.
I know. Well, I think
they got to try.
Yeah, I do you think? I mean, we've seen Doug say Doug's had a couple different versions of this whole thing. Last week, he a couple times came out and said, and I guess he also said in the production meeting with the NBC crew with Collinsworth, that my number one priority is to get Carson Wentz back to being like Carson Wentz again. I don't want to say he's lying, but I mean, do you think he just was saying what he felt like he had to say for public consumption? But maybe his feeling is more in step with the rest of the organization, and it might be better for everybody to move on. I don't know. I guess that's a question only Doug can answer.
Yeah, we would just be guessing. I mean, I think it would behoove the entire organization to make it work. I mean, you can't trade him till March anyway, so you have this time. So you may as well at least, take a step back. Everybody take a couple weeks, and then let's at least try to find some common ground. I think Doug would genuinely want to do that, but in his mind, I mean, there's a chance he's already moved on. I think that's certainly possible. Yeah, I mean, I don't, from the outside, we don't know exactly how bad it is. You hear the words like irrevocable or, irreconcilable, whatever they are, whatever Mort's word was. Yeah, I mean, that makes you wonder. That makes you wonder if they've already in their minds moved on and they're already, working to facilitate a trade.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, we're all sort of trying to read things into answers, the way guys answer questions. Okay, that's what he's saying, but what's he really mean? I remember after Jalen Hurts' first couple games, especially his first game, the New Orleans game, we were all sort of surprised that Doug was so reluctant to praise Jalen Hurts after that game. I mean, everything he said about him was so measured. It was almost like I don't want to go overboard on this guy. Whereas if in his own mind he had already kind of moved on from Carson, you would have thought he would have been all in on Jalen Hurts right from that first game. Oh, man, this guy was great. Look at the way he lifted that team. Look at the way their guys rallied around him, and he didn't. In fact, if anything, he was so tepid in his responses that we walked out there kind of scratching our heads saying, geez, couldn't he have been a little more enthusiastic? So, I mean, there have been so many – this season has been so puzzling in so many ways. And it kind of leaves us all standing back trying to, kind of read the tea leaves. And that's always a dangerous and difficult thing to do.
Especially with Doug Peterson, because you could – I mean, he does so many mental gymnastics in his head to try, to take certain – like to have a certain tone to try to kind of get something across, that trying to figure out exactly why and where he's coming from is sometimes pointless.
If you watched that press conference and didn't watch the game, you would have felt they lost. I mean, he looked like someone stole his puppy after that game. And it was all because he didn't want to go too strong on the Hurts praise. And yeah, I think he even admitted that part of that was to protect Carson's feelings, which red flag, right? I mean, if you can't praise a rookie quarterback for playing a good game because you're worried about the 28-year-old guy and his feelings, I'm kind of getting tired of Carson's feelings, honestly. I just am. I'm like,
Dave.
I mean, like, grow a pair. Right? Like at a certain point, be a little mentally tougher. And I understand he's gone through a lot in his time here. I mean, stuff we've never seen anyone go through, right? The injuries piled up. He watched his backup win a Super Bowl. They put a freaking statue outside of the link. But at a certain point, you got to be mentally tougher. And I know they drafted a kid in the second round, but they paid you $128 million too. It's not like the Eagles at every turn haven't shown him that he's the guy. So at a certain point, Carson, like,
toughen up.
I don't care about your feelings anymore.
Yeah, go throw a touchdown. Screw your feelings. Throw a touchdown.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I think that. And I think that's how the bulk of the Eagles fans feel at this point. I mean, he still has his supporters, but not in great numbers. And I think that there's some people that think that he can still be a good quarterback, but are tired of the drama. And this sort of feeling that he is that he feels like he's been wrong somehow. I mean, this isn't the town for quarterback to feel that way. I mean, this is a tough town, and that's what you kind of sign on for. And I think the guy's really good. I mean, when they drafted him, when his first came out, and his name was first linked to the Eagles back before the draft, I went back and tried to get all the footage I could get of North Dakota State to watch him, and I was all in. I really was. My only concern was it's hard for me to gauge the level of competition. I mean, I don't know, the guys he's playing against, 99% of them aren't ever going to play in the NFL. So it's kind of hard for me to project. But in terms of just his ability, his size, his arm strength, his mobility, the fact that he ran his own game at the line of scrimmage, he wasn't a robot letting the coaches call the plays. I mean, everything about him was really impressive, to the point where I was all in. And when we saw what he did in 2017, even more so. And, we've said this a couple of times now in the last couple of weeks, this perception that's kind of out there among the people who just don't like him now, that, 2017, he was good, but he wasn't, he wasn't any good after that. The idea that 2018 and 2019, he wasn't that good. He was. He was. And so this was a bad year. Nobody can say otherwise. But the fact that the idea that people are trying to just characterize like it's a 2017 thing, everything kind of went his way, but he's never really, other than that, he's never really been that good, simply isn't true. And I really believe that this guy's he's going to continue playing in the league, and I think he's going to come back and play well. And as I said, if that's the case, I would rather have him do it here than somewhere else.
That's fair. Right, before we let you go, we wanted to bring up the Pro Football Hall of Fame finalists for this year's class, narrowed from 25 to 15. Eric Allen, not among the 15 finalists again. It's a tough deal. I think people in this city know how good he was. What's your reaction to it? And do you think he ever makes it in there?
I do. I I know Eagles fans are going to be disappointed. I was disappointed because I think he so deserves it. To me, the surprise is that he isn't in already. But it's having been part of the whole Hall of Fame thing. I know it's not as easy as people think. You kind of have to. Your name has to kind of be in the discussion first, and it doesn't have to happen right away. But just the fact that he made the ballot and he was in the discussion tells me that he's got a chance. And I think now that people have more of an opportunity to sort of look at his career, look at his numbers, and those that really do their homework, just try and talk to people from that era and just ask how good the guy was. I think his case will grow. I think the strength of his case will grow now that people are aware of him and are probably going to try to do a little more homework on him. I think their reaction is going to kind of be, oh, geez, how didn't we talk about this guy before? I've seen that happen. I've seen that guys who weren't even in a discussion all of a sudden become in the discussion. And then you kind of look at it and you say, geez, wow, we should have put this guy in long ago. And all of a sudden, yeah, you might not get it the first year, maybe even the second year, but it'll happen if you're as good a candidate as Eric is. And I think he is. My feeling is whenever, and I was a Hall of Fame voter, I guess for 14 or 15 years, it's not easy because everybody thinks it's easy, but it's not, because you're choosing between all great players. So one of the ways I used to try and look at it was I would look at guys who were in the Hall of Fame that we had already put in the Hall of Fame that were comparable to the guy you were thinking about. And in the case of Eric Allen, to me, the comparison I would make would be Aeneas Williams.
He's better.
Who played at the same time, who played in the same division, and was, again, as Reuben said, a real good player. And I have no problem with Aeneas Williams being in the Hall of Fame. I really don't. But if Aeneas Williams is in the Hall of Fame, then Eric Allen should be. Because between the two of them, if I had to pick one guy to go play corner for me next Sunday, I would take Eric Allen over Aeneas Williams. So if you put Aeneas Williams in there, to me, it's clear that Eric Allen deserves to be in there. And I think he will be. I know the fans are a little disappointed it didn't happen for him, but they should be heartened by the fact that he made the ballot. And once you make the ballot, then I think from there, you can grow your candidacy. I'm confident that it'll happen for him, and it should. It should have happened already by now.
Rondé Barber made the list of finalists. EA had 10 more interceptions, more Pro Bowls, more pick sixes. Rondé had a Super Bowl. It is thanks to the Eagles in part, but God, Donovan killed Eric Allen's chances, didn't he? I just realized that.
Mm-hmm. I actually thought the same thing.
Is the Super Bowl really? I saw a stat somewhere. I think it's 68% of Hall of Famers won at least one Super Bowl or NFL championship. It's really that important, I guess. I mean, because Rondé Barber was not, I would say he's not half the player Eric Allen was, but anybody who watched the two of them, Rondé Barber was a good player, but Eric Allen was a better cornerback than Rondé Barber, period.
Yeah.
Is the Super Bowl that important?
Well, yeah. I mean, I always thought that it was more important for linemen, because the stats are harder. Stats are harder to define on linemen, especially offensive linemen. So guys that were linemen on Super Bowl winning teams, I thought had a big leg up. Skilled position players, where you got those kinds of stats that you can weigh one against the other, maybe not so much. But yeah, it matters. It matters. But I just think if you look at longevity, you look at durability. I think one of the great arguments I would make on his behalf is that he played 14 years and was always a cornerback. A lot of times guys start as corner. Even the great ones like Rod Woodson, who I think is one of the best corners I've ever seen, finished his career at safety. A lot of guys, Ronnie Lott started as a corner, finished his career at safety. A lot of guys get 8, 9, 10 years in and they have to change positions because they can't play corner anymore. Eric played corner from day one till he walked away. That's really rare. I remember that was one of the big arguments for Darrell Green. When Darrell Green came up, was Darrell Green played forever and he played a cornerback the whole time. He was a cornerback till he retired. And that was one of the big arguments that helped get Darrell Green in the Hall of Fame. Well, you can make the same argument for Eric. So, yeah,
who the hell's not voting for Darrell Green in the first place?
Yeah, I know. Sometimes you'd be surprised. some cases that you think would be slam dunks aren't. I mean, there are other cases like the Peyton Manning discussion this year will last all of about 3 seconds. Okay, Peyton Manning, in? Yes. Okay, let's move on. I mean, I was in the room and we did that with Walter Payton. Walter Payton. All right, do we need to really discuss this? He's in. All right, move on to the next guy. But sometimes the discussions become more drawn out and more combative than you would think. I'm not saying Darryl Green was, but yeah, I mean, sometimes stuff that you think would be, oh, that's easy. Sometimes somebody will come up with an objection that you never saw coming, but you got to talk it out.
What was take us behind the veil a little bit? Was there a guy that you really, really, really had to fight for during your time?
Well, I tried hard as I could for Tommy McDonald. And I only got him to the final 15 once and got that slap back in my face. Tommy finally got in years later with somebody else making the case. But yeah, I'll tell you one guy that I was on the sort of the opposite side of where people thought I should have been was Al Davis. That when Al Davis was up, because Al Davis was up God knows how many times, and there was a real divide there. The old AFL guys wanted Al Davis in, and the old line NFL guys didn't want Al Davis in. And I was sort of the guy that went across the aisle. I was kind of the NFL city guy that crossed over and said, "Come on, I know there's a lot that Al Davis did, and I know there's a lot that he stands for, and I know he's not the greatest guy in the world for us all to deal with, but come on. I mean, Al Davis belongs to the Hall of Fame. You look what he took over in Oakland and what he built that into. Come on, to leave him out, I mean, it would just be purely because you don't like him as a guy, and that shouldn't be the criteria. So I sided with the AFL guys, and Al Davis got in. And I was also a guy that argued very, very strongly for Lynn Swann. I mean, I thought Lynn Swann should be in the Hall of Fame, and it gets real contentious. I mean, it gets really personal. It gets really angry sometimes. I mean, those meetings go on 7-8 hours sometimes. It's exhausting. But the idea is to try and do them justice, to try and talk out every single case and make an educated and well-formulated, well thought out decision to put these guys in the Hall of Fame, because it's, it is the highest honor that the game affords, and it it really deserves that kind of discussion and scrutiny. So, but it was, it's not nearly as much fun as people think. In that room, it can get, the voices can get loud and some feelings can get bruised sometimes, but that's part of the process.
Well, I wrote Lynn Swann chapter for the Overrated, Underrated book, and Swann hasn't talked to Sal since. And,
yeah, I know. Well, the argument on Lynn was his catches. I mean, in terms of if you looked at his raw number of catches, I mean, he may have the fewest receptions of any receiver in the Hall of Fame. Probably does. I mean, at the time that he went in, he certainly did. And the number of catch balls that guys are catching today, yeah, I mean, Lynn had 300 and some, which was not a whole lot. But I just thought that he was a great big game player, and I thought that if he had played in another offense, if he did play for a team other than the Steelers, if he had played like in a Don Coryell offense, he would have caught a million passes. So I just thought
had better numbers, and he was in the same offense. But we're off. I said John Stallworth had better numbers in the same offense.
Yeah, and they both deserve to be in, I thought.
Yeah.
But I remember there was one year that Charlie Joyner and Lynn Swann were both finalists. And it was very obvious in the discussion in the room that the Charlie Joyner he came up, and it was kind of like, yeah, Charlie Joyner should go in, and we kind of moved on. And it was obvious to me in the discussion, Charlie Joyner is going to go in. Then Lynn Swann's name comes up because you go alphabetically. Lynn Swann's name came up, and we got back into the whole discussion again. Not enough catches, not enough this, not enough that. And so when it came down to the final discussion, I said, I can kind of tell where we're going with this, that, today we're going to put Charlie Joyner in the Hall of Fame, and we're going to leave Lynn Swann out. And I said, but tomorrow is the Super Bowl, because the vote is always the day before the Super Bowl. I said, tomorrow's the Super Bowl. And I'm going to ask each guy in this room, if if you had to play that game tomorrow and you can go out there with one receiver to play in that game, and you got a choice between Charlie Joyner and Lynn Swann, who would you take? And I said, if you want to be honest with yourself, you would take Lynn Swann and to play this game tomorrow. And if that's the case, then how can we sit here today and put Charlie Joyner in the Hall of Fame and keep Lynn Swann out? It was such a compelling argument that we put Charlie Joyner in and kept Lynn Swann out.
It is fascinating, though, because there's not I mean, everyone has their own idea of what it means to be a Hall of Famer. So it's fascinating that kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Greg Ward has averaged more catches per season than Lynn Swann.
Well,
I'll bring that up when we're putting Greg Ward in the Hall of Fame.
When Greg Ward comes up, you can make that argument.
All right, Ray, we appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again later.
Look forward to it. Take care, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, as always, to Ray Didinger for joining us. Rube, I want to get into my 2020 Eagles Awards. I do this every year, try to hand out awards for the season. I'm just going to go through, tell you who I named, and you can tell me whether or not you agree. I go with a best offensive player and a defensive player and an MVP, so I double up on one of the sides, but you'll kind of figure it out as we go. MVP of the season, I have Brandon Graham. First Pro Bowl year. I don't even know if this was his best season, but it's really hard to kind of quantify what he means to the team. And especially this type of year where it's just a miserable season. It sounds a little hokey, but his positivity matters. And I think that, you know, he was playing hard in week 17. I don't think anyone questions that.
Yeah, I think positivity is great, but you have to match it with performance. And he did that. He's an all-time great Eagle. And I think everybody was just thrilled he finally got a Pro Bowl. What did he finish with? 8 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's been a consistent, really 7, 8, 9, 10 sacks, 9.5, I guess, whatever.
Never 10.
The last 4 years hasn't gotten to 10. So, yeah, I was kind of thinking of, you know, when you mentioned MVP, I was kind of thinking Jay Jaw, but he wasn't really able to consistently throughout the season. Yeah, I would agree with BG. I think it's a great pick.
Okay.
The only possible picks for that would be Kelsey, Fletcher, and BG. I mean, there's nobody else you could even.
Yeah, and which is why my best offensive player, Jason Kelsey, my best defensive player, Fletcher Cox. Look, Fletcher Cox is a better player than Brandon Graham, but I'd argue that Graham deserves the MVP more than Fletcher this year.
Totally agree.
Fletcher, but we saw how much Fletcher means to this team in week 16. He comes out after 7 snaps. The defense looks completely different. He never gets credit for how good he is.
Yeah, and I don't think he's the player he used to be, you know, a couple of years ago, but he's still really good. And he's piling up those Pro Bowls. He ended up with like 6 sacks, I think, which is
6.5.
6.5. It's a good number for an interior lineman. I would guess it puts him in the top, 5 D tackles in the league this year. So I can't argue with that. And he just does so much that doesn't go in the stat sheets. So I can't disagree with that. And I would agree with Kelsey too. I think they're kind of similar. They serve similar roles on opposite sides of the ball.
Yeah. And I can't even imagine what the Eagles would have looked like without Jason Kelsey.
That's a scary thought.
It really is, especially this year because of all the injuries.
Yeah. It's really remarkable what he's been able to do while there's just chaos around him. He just is able to go out there and play snap after snap, game after game, year after year at a high level. Yeah.
We heard his, so he put out a statement about Tank Gate, and he kind of explained the conversation he had with Doug Peterson on the sideline. And all that stuff was kind of the newsy stuff out of it. But the part of it I loved was that he went and talked to Doug. He said, Sudfeld's in? Yes. Okay. The rest of the starters staying the same? Doug says yes. And he goes, okay. So he goes, he starts snapping balls to Sudfeld. He brings the rest of the offensive line over, makes them listen to the cadence. That's that type of leadership is so invaluable that he's the guy doing that on his own, saying, we have to get ready for this new quarterback. I need all the offensive linemen to listen. Like, that part is impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pro. That's a true pro. And there was a point, I think it was like 6 minutes left, it's the end of a miserable game and a miserable season in an empty stadium on a cold day, and you're not going to the playoffs. And he's sitting on the bench going over plays. You can see him with the iPad going over plays with Sayamalo. And I'm thinking, talk about a pro. I mean, you could so easily take a shortcut there. It might have been his last game of his career. We don't know. But it was a game that had no relevance in the standings. It was Sudfeld's out there, that they're not going anywhere. And they were intently looking at plays. And that's why he's an all-time great.
Yeah. Biggest surprise of the season, Alex Singleton. This guy works his way up from the CFL. Last year he's on the practice squad, gets bumped up. This year he makes the roster, still just a special teamer until I think it was October 18th. He gets his first start, starts the last 11 games of the season, finishes with 120 tackles.
Yeah, he's a tackle machine. I was really impressed with him. He's another one of these practice squad guys that really had to wait to get his chance. And I know a lot of people are like, well, if he's that good, why wasn't he playing? I don't know if he was ready. Maybe he was. I can't imagine he wouldn't have been better than Nate Gary right from the get-go. But he's impressive, and he plays hard, man. And he's a short tackler. And, he can get to the quarterback. We saw him with a pick six. And I think he's only going to get better. Now, he's an older guy. I think he's 27. Mm-hmm. He seems like kind of a newcomer, and he is to this league and to this team. But you go into next year feeling like pretty good about one of your linebacker positions. And it's probably been a while since that was the case. For a while, I would have thought Fulgham was going to be your biggest surprise after about a month and a half. But obviously that didn't sustain. So I think
at the halfway point, he was. When I did the awards halfway through, he was the biggest surprise. Yeah.
Singleton, interesting player. Yeah, he's fun to watch. He's just all over the field. He plays hard. I mean, he's one of those guys that plays like an undrafted former practice squad guy who's always going to have something to prove.
Yeah, the proverbial chip on the shoulder type player, but he's good too. I mean, he's a talented player. Is he like super athletic? No, but he's athletic enough. And I think they found something. He'll be back next year. He's an exclusive rights free agent, which means he's back. That he doesn't really have a choice, but he wants to be back anyway. Biggest disappointment, I mean, Carson Wentz, and we don't need to get into it. I think we understand that he wins this award over a lot of other guys who could have.
Yeah, and I have a piece running today, Thursday, on the 10 biggest disappointments on the team. And man, it was hard. I mean, I started out with a list of like 16 guys who you could make a case for, and there's some guys who are bad, but you don't have expectations of them. But there's other guys that, you really expected a lot, and none of them delivered. I talked to our old friend, Andrew Culp, to get some insight
okay.
I wanted to get his because he's great on that stuff. And we exchanged a bunch of emails going back and forth on some. He had some interesting ideas too, because it was hard to narrow it down. And, we'll get more into that next week. But just between Ertz, JP, and Carson, I mean, that's a pretty formidable top three. Disappointing, but has to go to Carson. There's no doubt about it. And he's the most disappointing in the league, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jalen Hurts. I know it's a small sample size, but he did some really good things in the last 4 games. And honestly, no one else. You can make a case for Jalen Reagor. It'd be a tough case. He was okay. You can make a case for Jack Driscoll. He was promising. I just think at the most prominent position to see Hurts come in and play fairly well in a couple of those games, he edges out the other guys.
Yeah, I think and I'll tell you what, for a 22-year-old in the position he was in this kind of season, with without an off season, he played fine. And I know it was pretty ugly on Sunday against Washington. But my overall takeaway was that there's something there. I don't know if he'll ever be a full-time starter. I don't know what his future is, but he did some nice things. He was better than I expected, and I would agree with that.
Sure. Defensive Rookie of the Year, not much to choose from. I'm going to go with Kayvon Wallace.
It's by default.
But almost by default. Sean Bradley played a little bit, but Wallace played more. He started 3 games, and I thought he was okay. It was his first start came against San Francisco, and he had to cover George Kittle. I mean, that's pretty tough. But I thought he, toward the end of the season, he was out there a little bit more, and he looks fine. And at least he got some playing time because there's a chance he might need to start next year.
Yes, there is. Yeah, kind of by default. Davion Taylor. I mean, he got It's really got to be Kayvon. I thought considering everything, I thought he was fine. I like the way he didn't back down from Kittle. I mean, Kittle made some plays, but he wasn't in awe of him. He went out there and battled him, and that's a tough ask. But I think they might have something there.
Yeah, most improved Jordan Mailata. You can argue Alex Singleton, but I think Alex Singleton was already pretty good. He just didn't get the opportunity. Mailata, I mean, we were at the point earlier this season where the Eagles were scrambling to move Jason Peters from right guard to left tackle because they thought there was no way they could play Jordan Mailata. And to go from that to the end of the year, and we're going, oh, he's a starter. He's the left tackle of the future, maybe. Really impressive. And there's maybe the most improved player in the league.
Yeah, he'd be up there. And credit to Stout for getting him there, helping him get there. And credit for Jordan to, I think the last couple of years he was kind of still a rugby player trying to play football. This year he was a football player. And, it was fun to watch. He's a good dude. And he's got so much upside. I mean, he's going to keep getting better.
Yeah, he's still so young. I mean,
he's 23 still, right?
He's younger than Andre Dillard.
Yeah, he's 2 years younger than Dillard, right?
It's crazy. Yeah.
And he could be the starter next year.
Yeah, you're probably right. In the last 2 categories, best win and worst loss, I have the best win as Saints Week 14 because it kind of felt like, this team might make it to the playoffs. And then the worst loss to the Cowboys in Week 16 when you realized it's dead. To go down, to lose to the hated rival in that game.
Yeah, I might diverge from you and go worst loss was the opener against Washington because you had a 17-0 lead. It's the opener, and blowing that lead really kind of set the tone for the season. I mean, Carson was off to a great start. He was, you watch Carson those first couple of drives. I mean, that was the Carson of old. They were running the ball. Doug was calling play, and then it just fizzled out, and they never got back there. So I'd probably go the opener. That opening day in the NFL, man, it really sets the tone for your season. And sometimes you can lose in the opener and have a good year, but so many times it really does set the tone, and I think it really did. I think blowing that game put them in a hole that, I mean, they kind of almost got out of it because they did lead the division for a few weeks there, but
it really set the tone for Washington too, I think.
It's probably true. Yeah.
Like they're not giving up. They're going to be a fighting team under Ron Rivera. It kind of held true. Yeah.
I mean, Ron outcoached Doug, his former colleague, a couple of times.
Yeah.
Well, not former colleague, but they were here together. Yeah.
I want to go through it's wild card weekend. We're going to have football all weekend, which is exciting. Any of these games really kind of stick out to you that you really want to see?
I think Colts Bills, which I think is the first game of the weekend, I believe.
Yeah, 1:05 on Saturday.
Yeah, I just love the fact there's going to be football from 1 o'clock Saturday till midnight on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to be glued to the TV. I love it. I love this time of year. And, usually the Eagles are in the playoffs, which is great. And we get to cover these games and we never get to really watch them. We're busy. So it's a little different. Maybe it's not ideal, but I think the Colts-Bills, you got a former Eagles offensive coordinator versus a former Eagles defensive coordinator. Both teams are playing well. I mean, Buffalo is really an intriguing team to me. Normally, in a normal year, they'd have a bye. They wouldn't even be playing this weekend. So I'm a big fan of both coaches. They're both great guys, and that's going to be a fun game to watch.
I'm interested for that Sunday night game, Browns-Steelers, and it's interesting we both picked the AFC games, but the Browns, they waited 20 years, 18 years to get to this point, and they're not going to have their head coach. That's fascinating to me.
I feel
and they're playing. Yeah, I feel awful for them too. But they're playing they're playing a big rival in that game. That's going to be fun to watch, and that's the way the weekend ends. So you picked the way the weekend starts. I picked the way it ends.
Yeah,
I like that. We've gone so long here.
It's interesting too because I think the Titans are really good, but the Ravens have been playing great. Lamar's finally stopped. I'm picking all the former Eagles coaches, and they're all over the place. 7 of the 14 coaches are former Eagles coaches, which is crazy. Sean Payton was here, McDermott, Reich, Harbaugh, Rivera, and
Nagy.
And Nagy. Yeah, I keep forgetting the Bears are in it.
It's easy to forget that.
Yeah, so 2 of the games are 2 former Eagles coaches going head to head. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun weekend.
It will be. Super Bowl. Yeah, let's go on record. What do you got?
I'm going Bills-Packers. I'm going to go Packers over the Bills in the Super Bowl. I think the Packers, Aaron Rodgers is playing, better. I can't say better than any quarterback I've ever seen because we saw Mahomes last year. Mahomes isn't quite at that level right now. Josh Allen's been incredible. That's a game between 2 incredible defenses and 2 hot quarterbacks, one young and one older. I'm going to go Packers-Bills. I'm
going Packers-Chiefs. Packers winning. We both think the Packers are going to win. I kind of side with quarterback play, and in this case, it's a quarterback who has kind of seen it all. And I just really want to see Rodgers and Mahomes in a Super Bowl. And I know that we talked about this offline, and you were mentioning that Josh Allen's been as good as Mahomes recently, but he's not as good as Mahomes. And I just want to see Rodgers and Mahomes in a Super Bowl. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think Bills Chiefs AFC Championship it would be incredible. Andy Reid fired Sean McDermott, but also kind of got him hired in Carolina, which led to him becoming a head coach. And they're still very close, even though he fired him. To see Sean coaching against his mentor would be fascinating. And Sean and Rivera. There's just so many. The Andy Reid. Basically, this playoffs kind of emphasizes how incredible the Andy Reid coaching tree is. Because they're all over the place here. 5 of these guys, 5 out of the 14. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, if you enjoy the Eagle Eye Podcast, do us a favor. Please rate and subscribe wherever you get your rate and comment. I always say that so smoothly, and I don't know what just happened there. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye Podcast, do us a favor. Do I always say rate and subscribe? Is that what I always say?
Yeah.
Rate and subscribe. Yeah, do that. For Reuben, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
That was like our longest podcast ever.
Yeah, that went long. Whatever.
It was good.